Plushie of the video, this is an ice cream sandwich pusheen. Sometimes when I'm with my friends, which is rare because I have approximately 2 friends and one of them is my boyfriend, I like to ask the question of, if you had to recite one movie front to back, or else someone was gonna what would that movie be? For me, it's either The Barbie Diaries, obviously, or Aquamarine from 2006. The reason being, I have watched it at least once a year every single year since the year it came out, aka 2006. So everything is ingrained in my brain. Why am I doing this video? I don't know, because I thought it would be fun, and I saw Sriracha do this with the Bratz movie, and I was like, this is genius. I have a movie that I can do this with, aka Aquamarine. So there you go. So we get like some mysterious like title sequence where like we hear like some laughter, some giggling coming from the water. We don't see anything yet other than like fish and stuff. And then the most amazing summer song, coincidentally named Summertime Guys, starts playing. And I mean, it is very true. Like, summertime guys, school is out, the sun is shining. Summertime guys, I think I want to make it mine. I don't know what a summertime guy is as opposed to just a regular guy, but I do know that there's nothing like the feeling that you get inside looking in the eyes of summertime guys, right? And we see the Hottie McHotterson, Raymond, and then we are introduced to 2 out of 3 of our main characters. We have Claire, played by Emma Roberts, and Haley, played by JoJo. Yes, JoJo, as in get out right now, it's the end of you and me. She was like 13 when she sang that song, by the way. Crazy. Like, where is this hypothetical man getting out of? Her parents' house? Presumably that's where she is, because she's 13. This is besides the point. So they're like reading a little teen magazine. Also, oh my god, I miss the teen magazine days. There was nothing more fun than figuring out which Jonas brother I was destined to be with. I would always rig my answers so that way I ended up with Joe, because Hannah Kim Loves Joe Jonas at hotmail.com was my first email address ever. And I'm proud of that. So they're giggle-gaggling, being like, oh, look at him, Claire. I'm looking at him, Haley. Sitting up there being gorgeous, looking for someone to rescue. He should so be rescuing us. What's wrong with this picture? And then we are introduced to the mean girl villain of the movie, Cecilia. And she like undoes her top, and then she's like, look at my boobs. Everyone look at my boobs. And I can't help but wonder why Cecilia, who is presumably like 16, 17, 18 years old, Raymond is canonically 18 years old because he's talking about going to college, and Haley and Claire are, how am I supposed to face the 8th grade without you? They're 13. It's relatively normal for a young teen, a tween if you will, to have a crush on someone older. Lord knows I did, because Hannah Kim Loves Jonas at hotmail.com, I made that email when I was 8. So that's fine. But then why is Cecilia genuinely like mean, genuinely feeling threatened? These literal children have a crush on this guy that she's trying to pursue, and she's like acting like she's feeling genuinely threatened, and she's getting her friends to bully them, being like, say something, you're never gonna get a tan wearing all those clothes. And then Haley is like, or skin cancer, and then the other one goes, please, we don't even smoke. And it's like, why do you care about bullying these 13-year-olds so much? Anyway, we find out that Claire's parents are dead, and she lives with her grandparents, who own this like beach club. This is where they hang out every day. Where are they living? Florida? California? I don't know. But they filmed everything in Australia. So if you look closely, you can see the weird like eye level door handles that Australia has. We also see like a fake out villain. It's like this old man who like, they're like, oh my god, it's Leonard. And then he's like actually chill. He just doesn't do anything. He just kind of looks scary because he's like an old man who doesn't say much, which like, you know what? Yeah, old men in general are scary, so I don't actually blame them for being scared of him. Then they talk about how Haley is moving away to Australia, funnily enough, because her mom is a marine biologist and she just got a job in Australia, so she needs to leave Baybridge. Where's Baybridge? I don't know where Baybridge is, but Haley needs to leave Baybridge because Haley and Claire are BFFs, obviously. And they're like, we need to figure out a way to get you to stay in Baybridge. We get like some weird like seance thing where there's like a huge like tidal wave from the ocean and there's like a huge storm and stuff. In the morning, everything on the beach and everything like in like the pool club area is all like wrecked, and then they're like, oh my god, what the heck. They go down to the pool because they're like, oh my god, Raymond's there, he's the hottie McHotterson, so we need to like see him for some reason. And while they're in the pool area that Raymond and Claire's grandfather are cleaning, Claire is like looking into the pool water because she's like, Grandpa, are the pool lights still on? Oh, important piece of information, Claire's parents drowned, so that's why they're dead. So Claire is afraid of the water. Oh yes, because Haley was like, summer's almost over and you haven't been in the water once. And then Claire's like, once would be way too many times. So there you go. Claire is peering into the water, being like, Grandpa, are the pool lights still on? And then part of the pool part of like the edge of the pool breaks. So Claire falls into the water, and then Raymond sees that Claire has fallen into the water. And I don't know how to explain this without demonstrating it, so I'll just do that for you right now. Hang on. So he sees her fall into the water, right? So then he goes, Claire! And like immediately rips off his shirt, and I think that's the funniest shit ever, because his first instinct was to rip off his shirt. I mean, yeah, in face of danger, that's what I always do. So while Claire is under the water, and you know what? Raymond was taking his sweet time getting into the water, rescuing her, but while she's under the water, she makes eye contact with something or someone. So Claire is being lifted out of the water by this heroic hunky McHunkerson Raymond. And then Haley was like, oh my god, Raymond totally jumped in there to save you with his actual biceps. Were they flexed? Oh god, they must have been flexed. And then Claire is trying to explain that she saw something in the water, and then Haley is like, okay, fine, we'll go investigate tonight. Put on your big girl pants and meet me at 9. So they sneak into the pool area, right? Which, like, Claire's grandparents own the pool area. Like, they own the pool club, so surely she can just, like, go in there whenever she wants. I don't know. Whatever. They're in the pool area at night, and I'm gonna sneeze. Anyway, they're in the pool area. They're trying to coax whatever is in the water out with, like, I don't know, dead fish and like fish sticks and then like gummy worms and stuff. And then as they're arguing, they're like, oh my god, no, I don't know. And then you hear someone go, I bet I know what it was. And then they're like, and then the voice goes, I'm guessing it was a mermaid. And then her tail like smacks on the top of the water, and it's like, oh my god. And then she like swims up to them, kind of like, not like scarily, but it is a little scary. And then she like emerges out of the water right in front of them, and she goes, boo. And then they scream. Basically, they've just met a mermaid, and she's like doing cool flips in the water. She's like, look what I can do. And she goes like flipping. And then we also find out that her fingernails turn colors based on her emotions, which I think is really cool. You know, when I was a kid, I really thought that they would like repaint her nails for every color, but obviously they just like used computers to do that. So yeah, after all of the screaming and jumping out of the water and whatever, Leonard, that scary man, quote unquote, hears them, and he's gonna come out to reprimand them or something. So then they're like, okay, we'll come back tomorrow morning and whatever. The next morning, they hear that the pool that the mermaid has been inside has been drained, and they're like, what the heck? They go down, and it turns out the mermaid was hiding in like one of like the cabanas, and she's naked. So then they're like, oh my gosh, how did you get out here? And then she reveals that she has legs, and then they're like, oh my gosh, what? You need to get out of here, like someone's gonna see you. And then they're like, well, she doesn't have any clothes. So then Haley gives her this like shirt that she's wearing, and it's the iconic aquamarine colored shirt, and she like ties it up all cool. I remember trying so hard to do that with like shirts. It never worked. So they're in Claire's room, they're finding out more information, and then they're like, so do you get to keep the legs? So then she's like, technically we can only have them when the sun's out. And then Haley's like, so this is your first time ashore? And then she goes, first time on land, first time with legs. And then she's like, oh, you never know. But then we see a shell ringing, and then she's like, oh, clams, they found me. And we find out that it's her dad on the shell phone. And pretty much what happened, why the mermaid is here in the first place, is she was about to be forced to get married to this random guy who she doesn't even love, because love doesn't exist in the mer world, apparently. So she makes a deal with her father that if she can prove to him that love exists in 3 days, then she won't have to marry the guy and she can just live on her merry way. And then she's like, you guys need to help me do this. And then they're like, well, okay. And they're like, if you don't have love where you come from, how do you know it exists? And then she's like, because I saw it once and I want it with him. And then we get a montage of Raymond, I don't know what it's called, like parasailing, and he's like looking all cool and like athletic and like hot and whatever. Not my opinion that he's hot, but you know, he's like, we're getting the idea that he's meant to like be appealing, right? And then obviously Claire and Haley are like, no, because like they love him, obviously. The mermaid just like runs up to him and goes, do you love me? And then he's like, no, but I think you're hot, really hot. And then he just kind of runs away. And then she goes back and she's like, oh, he doesn't love me? How could he not love me? Which, like, yeah, so true. She's like, you have to make him love me. And then they're like, oh no, Raymond's way too popular. I mean, all the girls are after him, even a few boys. And then she's like, fine, then you don't get your wish. And then they're like, what wish? And then she's like, you know, if you help a mermaid, you get a wish. So then they decide, we need to help her so we can get this wish, so we can wish for Haley to stay in Baybridge and not move to Australia. And then finally she goes, my name's Aquamarine. Now let's go find Raymond. And I'm like, you have been with them for like at least an hour and you haven't told them your name. That's why I've been referring to her as just the mermaid all the way up until this point, because I always thought that was kind of stupid. So they decide to call him and hang up, and then they like ride by his house on bicycles, and then Aquamarine ends up falling, like face planting, and then Raymond sees that, and then he like does this cool thing where he like runs out and then he hops over like the fence in like slow motion, and then he's like giving her a bandage and stuff. And then just as they're connecting, who shows up? Cecilia in this really sick car. And then she's like, hey Raymond, I'm ready for my driving lesson. And he's like, let me go grab my keys. So then she has time to bully these 13-year-olds. But now I'm guessing Aquamarine is meant to be like 16, 17-ish. There's a little bit of back and forth, a little bit of, you know, I'm never gonna do that again. And then they just kind of saunter off. They're planning on going to this like street fair thing, but then Aquamarine is like, I have no idea how to flirt with guys and stuff. So then they start reading all of these teen magazines, because everything that they've learned about love has come from the pages of these magazines. They learn a bunch of like flirting techniques and whatever, and then they go to the street fair, and then it's really cute because Aquamarine and Raymond are like flirting and like getting along and stuff. And it's really funny, that one scene where she's like flipping her hair like this, and like that was just like the funniest shit to me when I was a kid. They're going out on like a paddle boat, and it's like, oh my gosh, how cute. They're talking about, oh, I want to go to Fiji, I want to do this and that. And she's like, oh, I've been there, whatever, parents just don't get it. And then the sun is setting, aka she's gonna pop a tail any minute now, because she can only have the legs when the sun is out, right? So they scuttle away, and then they're like, we need to find a place for her to spend the night. And then she's like, I can't stay in the ocean because my father will just manipulate the current and pull me back home. So then they decide to put her in a water tower, which I don't know how hygienic that is. I also don't know how often like people or like towns like use water towers. So they drop her off in the water tower, and then Claire and Haley go to Haley's house to have like one final sleepover in Haley's house before she leaves. I completely forgot to mention, my apologies, but there's this like thing that the beach club puts on every year called the Last Splash, which I'm guessing is just kind of like a community party type thing where they have like games and like restaurants, and it's at the beach. But it's a big deal because they're like, oh my god, the last splash, the last splash. So they're like, Aqua has nothing to wear to the last splash. I mean, she can't keep wearing your t-shirts, no offense. So then they decide they're gonna go shopping first thing in the morning. And they do that, and you know what? We get an amazing shopping montage, and with an amazing song that's like, what you got, what you got, what you got, what you got, one original thing, oh baby, I need an original thing. And I'm like, I literally need an original thing. This is actually kind of crazy. The reason why I know this movie so well is because I would watch it literally every single year with like my long distance friend. Well, she was my long distance friend because our moms were friends, but whenever our moms would like get together for like a couple days, she would also come. And then we would just end up watching Aquamarine every single time. That kind of became like our tradition. So hi Alicia, if you're watching. She's not watching. Anyway, whenever we would like play pretend, we would always play that song, like one original thing, as part of like our own shopping montage. If I was to ever be in like a movie or a TV show, hope then I would love to do like a shopping montage or like a makeover montage or something. Yes, because they do a makeover as well. Haley gets blue streaks in her hair like Aquamarine. Aquamarine has blonde hair, but she has like blue streaks in her hair. Really super freaking cool and stuff. Afterwards, we see them all like made over and they're looking super cool and hot and fun and fresh and exciting. They get back to Claire's house, and then Aquamarine realizes she doesn't have any earrings, and then they're like, oh, we have earrings, and then she's like, no, I wear stick-ons, and then they're like, you mean clip-ons? And she's like, no. And then she leads them to like the pier, and then she's like, you see that buoy out there? I need you to swim out there and get me a couple of starfish about this big. And then they're like, live starfish? That's what you wear for earrings? And she's like, they compliment me. And then Claire's like, I have some earrings that'll compliment you just fine. And then Aqua's like, no, I mean, they literally give me compliments in my ear. So Aqua then like beckons a couple of dolphins to come along and like lead them out into the water. But Claire doesn't want to go in the water because she's afraid of the water. Aquamarine can't go in the water because she'll turn into a mermaid again. So Haley has to be the one to swim out to the buoy with the dolphins and grab the starfish. Fun fact, when they were filming this, Sarah Paxton and Emma Roberts really wanted to do the dolphin thing, and JoJo was really afraid to do the dolphin thing. So funny how that worked out, I guess. So while Haley is swimming out with the dolphins to get the starfish, Aquamarine and Claire kind of have a heart-to-heart. And then Aquamarine is like, don't you just love? And then Claire's like kind of giggling, and then she's like, what? And then Claire's like, you're just so sure of yourself. Aquamarine then starts telling the story of how she witnessed love for the first time, saying that it was around this area in the ocean. She was migrating and she saw a couple on a little blue boat. She was like, they're just so in love, like whatever. And then from that day on, I knew that I wanted that. And then Claire was like, was there a name on the side of the boat? And then Aquamarine is like, I don't remember, Claire. Oh, the Claire de Lune. And then Claire's like, that was my parents. And then Aquamarine is like, Claire, they really loved each other. Yeah, and then she's like, I don't think they would want you to be afraid of life. I think they would want you to be friends with it. I forgot to mention also, at the street fair, pretty much Raymond asked Aqua to go with him to the last splash. So that's why like getting the perfect outfit and the perfect jewelry was so like a big deal, because they were like, Aquamarine needs to look as snazzy as possible, so that way Raymond will obviously fall in love with her after one date. Haley gets back with the starfish. They're chilling at a little cafe. Two of Cecilia's little minions come along, and then they're making fun of Haley's new blue hair. And they're like, blue hair spreading. You guys look like the grandma brigade. What's next? Dentures or depends? And then Aquamarine is like, what's next is I'm going with Raymond to the last splash. And then they're like, I've got some advice for you. You need to learn how to separate fantasy from reality. And they're like, what? And then they're like, Cecilia's going to the last splash with Raymond. He asked her last night after the street fair. And then Aquamarine is like, what do you mean? And she's like, I've got some advice for you too. And then she like puts water in her mouth and she squirts it at them, like, but in like a perfect like too like stream, because she's like magic and she has like water powers and stuff. And then she's like, put on a dry shirt. And it's like, wow, that was crazy. But then Aquamarine is heartbroken. She's running to the water, and then Haley's like running after her being like, Aqua, don't do it. And then she's like, you know what I think about love? Love stinks. And then we find out that Haley's parents are divorced and whatever. But then, long story short, Aquamarine does not go back into the ocean, and then they go back to Claire's house. At the same time, Claire is like, what the fuck? So she goes to Cecilia's house to confront Raymond. And then we find out that Cecilia told Raymond that Aquamarine had a boyfriend, which is why she can't go to the last splash with Raymond, and Cecilia should go with Raymond instead. And then Claire's like, Aqua doesn't have a boyfriend. Who told you that? And then as Raymond is like figuring out that Cecilia lied, Cecilia's trying to like distract everyone. So she goes, Vince, the little girl wants to go in. And Vince is just this like random teenage guy. And then Claire's like, I want to go in where? And then Vince apparently is like, into the pool. And then he like picks her up and he's gonna like throw her into the pool. And she's like, no, put me down, no. And she starts like crying because obviously she's traumatized and she's scared of the water. And then it's like really embarrassing for her, and she like runs off crying. Also, she's a child. She's like 13, and this is like a party of like whatever 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and they're all like laughing at her, and it's like she's a child, right? And then Cecilia's like, God, take a joke. And then Raymond's like, take a joke? What's the matter with you? She's scared. And then Cecilia's like, she was trying to get attention, hello. And then Raymond's like, well, no, that's your job, isn't it, Cecilia? And then he like hops out of the hot tub and he like runs after Claire. And we get another really funny part where he's like walking out of the party, and presumably because he's like just coming out of the pool, he was only wearing like swim shorts and he's like putting on his shirt. But he does, I need to show you again because it is so funny. If you go back and watch the movie, you will see this very clearly. But as he's like rounding the corner of like the fence, his shirt is literally like this. So he's like, Claire. And it's like, what is up with this dude in his shirt? So Raymond is like to Claire, I really need to talk to Aquamarine. Do you know where she is? And then she's like, yeah. So they go to Claire's house, but Aquamarine is in the bathtub, which means she has a tail. Side note, she's eating Ben and Jerry's ice cream. One of like the things is like Aquamarine would occasionally be, I need some salt, and she would like put loads of salt on whatever she's eating because she's from the saltwater sea, right? So she would be putting salt on her ice cream, but in actuality it was sugar. So I knew that as a child, so I would put just like extra sugar on my chocolate ice cream. Really crazy of me. Raymond and Claire are like coming up the stairs, and then they're like, oh my god, we hear them coming, but Aquamarine has a tail right now. So then Haley hops in the tub and like puts her legs kind of like, I don't know, it's a whole thing. Long story short, after Aquamarine gets out of the tub, Raymond officially asks her to the last splash, and then they're like, OMG, yay. Also, this entire time, there's kind of like a B or like C plot where Leonard, like the scary old man, is like researching about mermaids because he found like a scale in the pool, and then he found like a mer-ish necklace, and he's like researching, and he's like, mermaid, you say? He's got his suspicions. I have a really hard time saying that word. But now it's time for the last splash, and they show up looking beautiful, fresh, amazing, fun, and exciting. Aquamarine and Raymond are bonding. Haley and Claire are kind of spying on them, and at that point, Haley's mom shows up, and then she's like, I see you've made a new friend. And then Haley's like, yeah, how about that? Another friend I can say goodbye to. Ouch. But just at that moment, Claire's grandma shows up, and she's like, oh, Ginny, I can't believe you did this thing. Like, congratulations. And then Haley's mom is like, I've been looking for this position for like 10 years or something like that. And then Claire's grandma says to Haley, are you happy for your mom? And then Haley goes, ecstatic. And this is why I say ecstatic, because of Aquamarine. So anyway, we get like a Weezer cameo for some reason. They're playing Island in the Sun. Perfect, amazing. They're dancing. It's so cute. Cecilia walks in and she's about to like break them up or something, but then Haley and Claire intercept and they go, back off. Don't make a bigger fool of yourself than you already have. And she does walk away and she's crying, and it's like, wow. You have been bullying these 13-year-olds for presumably like months, and they say one thing to you and you're upset. Cecilia runs off crying with her goons, and then Aquamarine and Raymond are done dancing, and then they're like talking, and they're like la 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 la, and they're like, oh my gosh, aren't you gonna stay for the fireworks? And she's like, I really want to, but it's sunset, so she has to go. And she's like, tomorrow at the pier you can tell me. And then he's like, tell you what? And then she kisses him passionately. Crazy. And then she's like, you can tell me how that makes you feel. And then they run off, and then like giggling tee ha ha, and then they're riding their bikes again to the water tower, but then Cecilia and her goons follow them on the car, right? And then they're just kind of like staking out the water tower for a while because they're like, she lives in a water tower, what a freak. Cecilia decides to kind of like investigate the water tower, and while she's investigating the water tower, her friends take her car and drive off and go back to the party. Cecilia opens the door and sees Aquamarine's tail. Cecilia freaks out. She locks the water tower door, and as she's coming down on the ladder starts like breaking away. So then I'll spread my wings and I'll learn how to fly. Anyway, and then once she's like down on the ground, she like properly like pulls the ladder away. So pretty much there's no way for anyone to get down or up from the water tower. So Aquamarine is effectively stuck. The next day, it's presumably moving day because they're like loading in final boxes into the moving van and whatever. And then she goes to Claire's house, and then it appears that Haley is having second thoughts about their wish because she's like, you know, my mom has worked all her life for this. And then Claire's like offended because she's like not understanding. And then Haley was like, well, maybe we can use the wish for something else. And then Claire's like what? A new best friend? a new person to tell everything to. And then Haley's like, well, maybe we can learn to stand on our own for a change. And then Claire's like, you mean me, don't you? And then Haley's like, I mean, I'm not your mom. And then, ouch. Right. And then Claire's like, please. You think I need you all the time when actually you're so mad at the world that no one wants to be around you. And then Haley's like, oh, so you're the one who's lived here your whole life? How do you figure I'm your only friend, huh? So Claire is giving her the silent treatment and Haley storms off, but then Claire is watching TV and she's watching the news and she finds out, oh, this is like not important really, but Cecilia's dad is a weatherman, so he's like on the local TV, whatever. So she sees that Cecilia's dad is reporting live from the water tower saying there's a girl trapped in there, aka Cecilia has tipped off her dad saying that there's a girl trapped in the water tower, and then she wants to expose that she's a mermaid. I don't know why she cares so much about exposing the fact that Aquamarine is a mermaid. Like, who actually cares? Like, that would be super freaking cool. So Claire's like, oh my god, Haley, they found her, it's on the news, we need to go see what's up. They get to the water tower. The fire department is there. They're like up in the thing. There's a swimmer in the water tower water. And then they're like, all we found is this like floaty that looks like a dolphin. And then Cecilia's like, no, she's probably still hiding under the water because she is a mermaid. Mermaid. And then Cecilia's dad is like, go to commercial. Cecilia's like, what the fuck? Where did she go? Claire and Haley are like, what the fuck? Where did she go? We find out that the old man, Leonard, had rescued Aquamarine. Somehow he found out that she was up there. He got a ladder and he rescued her. And then he gives her back her necklace because that necklace was hers. The mer-ish necklace that he found in the pool. Haley and Claire are still like mad at each other, but they're like trying to like stake out the pier where Raymond and Aquamarine are supposed to be meeting. Aquamarine arrives. Her and Raymond are talking a little bit. And then she's like, Raymond, when I came here, I was looking for something and I don't know if I found it. So I'm just going to ask you, do you love me? And then he's like, well, we've had one date, so no, but like, why can't I love you tomorrow? Why can't we just work our way there? And then Cecilia all of a sudden shows up and goes, I've got a better idea. Why doesn't she just go back to where she came from? She pushes Aquamarine off of the pier, and then Haley and Claire are like, oh no. And they're like, what the hell? And then Raymond is like, I'm gonna go get my rescue board. So he's running away. And Cecilia's like, he still chooses her over me? She's a fish! And she like screams this really high-pitched scream that I don't even know how she did that. So obviously, since Raymond has fucked off to just go grab his rescue board, he's supposed to be a lifeguard. Like, she's gonna, like, whatever. So then Haley's like, I'm going in. And then Claire's like, no, not without me or not. And then they hold hands and they jump off the pier together because that is their friendship being made up. They're out in the water. Aquamarine is like being pulled away by like a whirlpool. And then they're like, grab the buoy, we'll meet you there. So then they're all at the buoy. It's really funny because Emma Roberts is like shouting this entire time. That's beside the point. But pretty much Aquamarine is like, no, he's pulling me away because I couldn't prove to him that love exists. And then they're like, take our wish. And then she's like, what? And they're like, yeah, take it and you can call off your wedding. And then Aquamarine was like, don't you get it? There is no wish. I couldn't prove that love exists. I'm so sorry. And then Aquamarine is like, you jumped in here to save me and now you're trying to, and then you give me your wish? Why would you do that? And then Claire's like, I don't know. I guess I know that she'd do it for me and I'd do it for her. And it's because we love you, Aqua. The power of magic and friendship prevails once again because that friendship love was enough to prove to Aquamarine's dad that love did exist. And the storm clears, the water gets clear again, and everything's all sunny and beautiful and whatever. And then they're like, oh my god. And then Aquamarine's like, don't you see? You just proved to him that love exists. I guess you get a wish after all. They get a wish after all. And just at that minute, Raymond shows up with his rescue board. Yeah, thanks for freaking nothing, dude. That everything is fine now. But Claire faced her fear. She's in the water. She's swimming around, right? Aquamarine and Raymond are sitting on his rescue board. So they're talking, and then Raymond is like, I don't exactly know how to ask out a mermaid. And then she's like, well, we can meet in Fiji. And whatever. And then they kiss, and then dolphins like make a little heart, and it's like so cute and whatever. And that's pretty much the last time we see Aquamarine. Claire and Haley are like walking on the beach. Raymond comes up behind them, and then he's like, you're both pretty extraordinary. And then he gives him a little kiss on the cheek. And I'm like, it's bordering on weird, but I understand the sentiment. And then they're like, OMG, they're freaking out. And then he's like running away, whatever. And then we realize this is goodbye for Haley and Claire. They're like, I'll see you soon. I'm really gonna miss you. And then they like hug and they're crying, whatever. I'm getting chills just thinking about it because like it's just such like a pure representation of friendship, especially when you're like a young girl. So yeah, that's Aquamarine. And then the ending credits start rolling to the song, I feel connected, protected. It's like you're sitting right with me all the time. I used to listen to that song on my iPod mini nano, I don't know, the one that had like the little circle. I used to listen to that song all the time on my iPod. I've been talking for like 48 minutes straight, oh my gosh. But yeah, this movie has had like a massive impact on my life. Like I constantly reference things. I say like little phrases such as ecstatic and bull shark, purely because of Aquamarine. I know it sounds kind of like corny to be like, this movie shaped who I am as a person, but like a little bit. I mean, you don't watch a movie every single year, at least once a year for like 19 years and it not affect you in any way, you know? I think that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I don't know if this was interesting to anyone at all, but that's fine. Say goodbye to ice cream sandwich pushing. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and keep up the red vibes.